faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird brain. It's a plane. It's iWalter. Yes, it's iWalter, strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. iWalter, who can change the course of mighty rivers, bend ears with his annoying voice, and who disguised as Walter Interranti, mild-mannered janitor for a great metropolitan newspaper, fights a never-ending battle for truth, nonsense, and the American way. And now, another exciting episode in the adventures of iWalter.
Hey everyone, it's Walter from iWalter. Yeah, I try to tone down the intro, and it doesn't seem to work. It seems quite loud. I still got to look into if I want to buy a windscreen for my mic, because it probably would be a good idea. I had one at one point. I just tossed it. I got tired of using it. And by the way, folks, yeah, I did get a copy. I tried to download a copy because it is free. I bought a copy of Linux. It was like $5. Somebody had already burned it and, burned it to a disk. I can do that now. I do have a 4K Blu-ray player that I hooked up externally to my new PC. It's kind of weird. I'm so used to saying Mac all the time. Now I don't know how to say PC any longer, which is, kind of different. But yeah, the reason I did that, because I still like to learn a little bit about Linux. It's like the surface stuff, so I kind of don't forget about it. But I want to do it on the PC. So what I did was I looked around, and I want to keep my new computer everything solid state. And the way to do this is, obviously buying a solid state drive, because everything in there is, SSD 2, and one drive is SSD 2, and the other drive, it's called an M2. And it's very fast. And actually, one of the problems with Windows, apparently still, which I've noticed, is the files generally on conventional hard drives get very screwed up. They get very they get fragmented pretty quickly on Windows. That's always been a Windows issue. Well, one way around that I've noticed, if you have solid-state drives, you can defrag them in a matter of like seconds. Before, it would take forever to do. So if they even get really messed up on an SSD drive, yeah, it takes about like 35 seconds, not like a couple hours like it did before. So it only makes sense. So what I wanted to do is I don't want to really touch either drive that's actually running the PC part, the Windows part of this computer. Now, there was somebody, when I first was looking around for, I guess a couple weeks, couple months, when I was like getting fed up with my Mac machine. And there was a guy that actually bought the same thing I have. He bought an Alienware, and the first thing he did was he removed Windows completely, and he just put on and made it a Linux machine, which, hey, I tip my hat for that, because I was going to do that, but then there was like, well, there's certain things that, they don't really, Linux is, everything's made for them. Well, it's made by people. Everyday people, the programs. You can't really buy commercialized software for Linux, because it's open source, and it's meant to be that way. So they try to keep out profit margins out of this, I guess, something like that. So it's really difficult to find. Now there is Steam. There's a website, an app called Steam, and what they actually, I have it on here somewhere. I believe it's called Steam. Yeah, it is. It's called Steam. I'm looking at the app right now, but it's made for all platforms. It's made for Mac machines. It's made for Linux machines, and it's obviously made for Windows machines. And Steam is an account. They actually make more software than they did in the past. Because back in the past, Steam was basically for only video games. Like, what the great thing about that is you bought the software from them, and if you ever lost like the software, you don't have to worry about ripping or ruining your disks or any of your software, because you just re-download it, because you basically purchased the license off of Steam. You download it, Steam verifies your account, and you re-download the software. So yeah, it's been around for quite a few years now, I believe. Now Steam has actually gone further. They actually have other software, I believe, because I remember when I was looking for an audio editing software program, Steam actually was offering it for you could buy it directly from them, which means you don't have to physically worry about scratching disks or losing flash drives, because everything's on their website. Anyway, I actually had planned, believe it or not, on Wednesday I came up with this idea for a podcast, and I was going to do it that night, but then I got home. I was so tired. I've been so exhausted with this new job, which is no longer a new job. It's kind of, I hate to say this, it's weird coming out of my mouth, and it's another job I just don't like. But it's my new permanent job, I guess. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, it's very exhausting. So I was going to basically call this Three Disliked Blondes. You know, there's that band from years ago called Three Non-Blondes. Well, I was going to call this Three Disliked Blondes. And it was going to be, you know, because I believe this is the case at this point, Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and Jodie Whittaker. All three of them are probably bottled bleach blondes, I guess, in so many words or less. So I wanted to do a podcast on that. Now, I guess that's as far as it goes. All three are blondes, and all three are kind of like, at this point, probably aren't on people's, well, at least one way with Trump. I don't know about Boris Johnson. I really can't say. I honestly, he's a new prime minister. Obviously, he was picked by the people of Britain. So there's something to say about that. Just like Trump was picked by, Americans in the U.S. Now, people will beg to differ and say, well, no, Trump won unfairly, which is a bunch of nonsense. I'm just saying, though, that's what people are going to say. So there's that. I'm trying to pull up, like I did little screenshots of both Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. And now I kind of live in the King of Prussia area. I live in a probably more heavily, more Democrat area, more liberal area, unfortunately. Now, my friend Todd, he just went to another Trump rally, and he probably would beg to differ, because everybody there were Trump fans, obviously, because who else would go? Well, there was a couple that were protesting, and it was only a handful, according to my friend Todd. It wasn't that many, and it was actually, he said it was broadcast, I believe, on Fox News, and I never bothered to watch it. Not that I don't like Trump, I never followed that stuff before. Why am I going to start now? I'm not going to be a fanboy. As long as the guy does what he needs to do, I don't really care otherwise, quite honestly. One thing, I'm going to try to keep focus on that, but it was funny. My friend Matt keeps on insisted on telling me how bad Jodie Whittaker is. That's where I come with the dislike. And anybody who, it seems like, if you watch the news or follow the news, and it's funny because now having a PC, I have to use what they have. I don't have to, but, a lot of it, I do like the new web browser that Microsoft had put out. It's Google Chrome with their, glossy prettiness on top of it from Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Edge. Sorry about that. And it actually is really good. It's very fast. The whole machine is, but it's only for a solid state. Now, that being, mentioned in that, being solid state, so was my Mac computer. And it was great at first, but that was solid state too. But it's not as fast as this. And quite honestly, that was my biggest turnoff amongst many with Microsoft. It was just so damn slow. And it was always getting the hourglass of death. But unfortunately, on Mac, I was getting the beach ball of death, and that's just as bad, if not worse. That's basically when it's like in thinking mode, like it can't process the information that you're requested on your PC or your Mac, and it looks like a colorful, a multicolor, a gay flag beach ball for Mac, and then on Windows. I don't even know. I've never seen it lately on Windows. I think they changed the hourglass to like something similar on Windows because they seem to replicate Mac in many ways. That's another reason I kind of just would rather run Linux, but Linux has come a long way. And the one I want to run it's called Linux 19.3. It's Linux Mint 19.3 because I think there's one that's very popular for the last couple years called Ubuntu, which I tried it. I don't like it. I like Linux Mint, and I found that on my own, and with some help of my friend Rich Minjin. So anyway, here is something interesting, some comparisons between the three people, the two guys and the lady, the two gentlemen and the young lady, now Doctor Who. Surprisingly, Boris Johnson's only like 2 years older than me. I didn't know that. Now, here's the real knee slapper, which I didn't know this either, that Boris Johnson was born in New York City in 1964. It says June 19th, 1964, age 55. So I'm 53. And it says born New York. So, yeah, that's New York City. Could be, well, yeah, New York would mean New York City? I'm not sure. But I would assume so. Yeah, I know, never assume. Now, Donald Trump, born June 14th. Oh, I didn't even know this, too. This is interesting because they're both born in June. Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. I never knew this. In fact, I never knew they were both born in June. But Boris Johnson, I was born in 1967. Boris Johnson was born in 1964. And Donald Trump was born in 1946. So Boris Johnson's 55. Donald Trump is 73. But here's the thing. They're both were born in New York and in New York City because Donald Trump was born in Queens, New York, and it just says for Boris Johnson he was born in New York. Doesn't really specify. Which is kind of weird because I always thought you have to be born. Maybe that's just the U.S., but I thought you have to be born on, like for at least United States, you have to be born in on U.S. soil. And apparently he was not. So anyway, real quick, Matt, you're going to love this one. I got Matt Torrance, and I already picked his music for tonight. He posts stuff, and he texts me and Ed Rick, friend of Matt's, and I pulled a song already. I have to figure, you know what, I'm just going to put it aside now and be done with it so I don't have to worry about it later on. It's called TB. I don't know where he got that. He explained it to me one time, but Matt's not here to explain it to me because I forget very easily what the whole thing is behind the names and titles or ideas for his songs. because I really can't answer that. So, but Matt, you're like this, but I can't deny this, but on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter with six critics gave it 91% on season 12 of the new series. It's actually been back for 15 years. That's a long time. Excuse me. But the audience score on the same season, the one that just ended last Sunday, the audience score was 16%. And that was out of user ratings of 3,212. So they're comparing the 91% from six critics to 3,212. Now, the thing is with Rotten Tomatoes, I think Matt kind of brought this up to my attention on one of the videos he had sent me. The thing they don't tell you is when ratings aren't the way they want them to be, from people giving their input, they generally just erase them all. From people's, if there's too many negative reviews, then they just erase them all. So I don't know how many times it has been erased this year. Now, playing the devil's advocate, I really liked the new season. I think the very first episode was all right. But quite honestly, both season 1 and 2 with Jodie Whittaker, I actually really liked them. Now, Matt, you're going to ask me, do you like it as much as Tom Baker? And no, but, it's something brand new, and she does kind of incorporate, like any good actor will do, she incorporates, her predecessors in the role. I mean, in like playing the character. And she really seems to absorb somewhat from Tom Baker, in my opinion, because there's one part where in the very last episode, the doctor's talking to herself, and she says, "Oh, good, at least I'm still talking to myself." Talking to herself, and probably even answering herself. That was a big Tom Baker thing. Because Tom Baker was probably one of the most popular Doctor Who's. Probably that's why she's kind of reflecting on him. Now, she's never really watched the show, if I remember correctly, and neither did the new director or producer of the show. So that was the one thing I brought to the attention of another friend, not a fan, but a friend, that do you know that both the director and Jodie Whittaker, the only thing they knew about Doctor Who was pretty much absolutely nothing besides the fact that they are both on the show right now. So, what do you do as a director? What do you do as an actor? You actually do homework. If you're taking the role from somebody else, especially a role as old as that, the character is over 50 years old, so I think it's like 55, you do your homework by just seeing what your predecessors did. It's almost like working at a, at a business, and you are taking, a position from somebody else. But this case, you're taking a role from somebody else. And, you basically do your homework to see what you need to keep the business rolling. And I believe that's what both, Jodie and, is it, I think it's Chris Chibnall or something like that, what they did, the director. Let's see. You know what? It wouldn't be me if I did not look up the person who plays the new producer. Actually, I put in director. So it's producer. You know what? It's funny because I'm a communications major, and I honestly, I really quite don't understand the difference between, what it being a director and a producer is. I guess one basically funds the money, but it has some say because they are given the money. And the other one is, again, is the one who basically directs the shows. Now, I pulled up Jody. It's, not a big deal, and I didn't turn my volume down, so I don't want to open up the wrong page and run into some complications. But I think you kind of get the drift. But this particular producer worked with Jodie Whittaker. She also worked with David Tennant on a TV show called Broadchurch. So, when this producer actually, was told, hey, you're going to be producing Doctor Who, he was kind of blindsided almost. And when he had taken the job, again, you kind of, you do your homework. You asked actually, they came in blindsided, because even the stage, it was a brand new stage, a brand new crew. That happened with Matt Smith, too, where that it was like a clean slate with a whole new crew, people behind the scenes and in front. Yeah, Chris, it looks like Chebnall. Chebnall. I can't say his name correctly. Hey, I don't say any name. So, this is like the second time in the new series that basically everyone jumped ship and you started with from scratch. And I feel bad for the guy because, between him and Jodie Whittaker, all they get is a bunch of flack. I mean, I've never seen so much. It's really irritating. Okay, I'm looking at Chris's, the producer, his the stuff he's worked on. It's Broadchurch, Law and Order UK. There's a Law and Order UK version. Grace Point. And both Broadchurch and Grace Point, these are, British shows. David Tennant, he was involved with him. And he's also he's worked with Jodie Whittaker on a show too. I don't see it listed. It says he actually worked on Torchwood. That was a TV spinoff from Doctor Who. Doctor Who Confidential. He worked on that. The Great Train Robbery. Obviously, is a British movie. Camelot. That's obviously a Shakespeare play he worked on. There was a show where Jodie Whittaker, before becoming the Doctor Who, she did play a doctor on a show. Jodie appears on, and Chris Chebnall created Broadchurch. So maybe it is Broadchurch that she played a doctor on there as well. But yeah, it was the main character was David Tennant. Looks like, cast was David Tennant and Jodie Whittaker. So that's probably where she came in. And I heard that show was really good. I think it was only like 2 seasons or something, because he got pulled to do Doctor Who. So again, he picked actors that he worked with in the past. And, his choice was obviously Jodie Whittaker. So it makes a lot of sense. So I don't know. I mean, I could read all this bad publicity and stuff. Did I mention, actually, No, that's really interesting too. Now, I didn't know this, and this was just really coincidental because I actually did not bother to see this point. All three, I kind of wanted to use the analysis. They're kind of not that well liked, meaning Jodie Whittaker, Donald Trump, and Boris Johnson. Well, guess what? All three of them have birthdays in June. They're all June babies. So that, to me, is just kind of like fits the segment or the name of my show. That, trying to find things that are similar. And the one thing I was going to use is just that it's 2020 and all three are not that well liked. So Jodie was born June 17th, 1982. She is 37. She was born in the UK. Boris Johnson was born June 19th, 1964. But June 19th, June 17th, and June 14th is the birth dates of all three people. They were all born like a day or two apart. Different years, obviously. I just think that's pretty funny. So, and Jodie's my height. She's actually a little bit taller than me. She's 5'6". I'm only 5'5.5". Not that that's important. So yeah, that's pretty funny. And like I said, if you ever look at earlier pictures of Donald Trump, his hair was like brown, and so he kind of turned white. So he's obviously getting some type of dye. Jodie Whittaker, her natural hair color. Not that this means anything. I'm just trying to find some really bad similarities, and she's got brown hair, but for some reason, the strange thing with her on the new series, she is actually, I believe, the fifth Doctor Who. So the fifth Doctor Who in the original series was Peter Davison, and Peter Davison had blonde hair. So that's what I was wondering. Like, okay, they are both. Technically, she's according to the timeline, she's the 13th Doctor Who. But really, she's, on the new series, she's the 5th Doctor Who, and the 5th Doctor Who in the original series was Peter Davison. Peter Davison had blonde hair. So I don't know. I'm just trying to, mix and match things to make small talk. But it's kind of funny, too. And honestly, Jodie is kind of similar to Peter Davison because if you think about it, when Peter Davison got the role, I was in high school, and he was already Doctor Who for like a year or so. And when I asked people, like a kid in high school who also liked Doctor Who, and I was in like this trade school program at school, outside of school, but it was my what is that, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And this guy loved Tom Baker, but he could not stand Peter Davison. He thought, like, oh yeah, the show really went south. Well, funny, it's ironic for me that I actually really liked Peter Davison. I loved Tom Baker. I was upset when he regenerated into Peter Davison, but I loved Peter Davison because there was a couple of those episodes that actually were just being broadcasted for the very first time in the U.S. And in fact, we got, it was at the time the 20th anniversary. So, I watched that live on PBS on Channel 12. And they said that it was broadcasted in the U.S. We got it, I think, a day before England did. So that caused a little bit of a commotion. But the bottom line is, I was, I had watched Doctor Who for quite a few years at that point. And when the 20th anniversary came out, I loved it, but it was the first time it was ever shown. It was called The Five Doctors. But the bottom line was, yeah, Peter Davison was not that well liked by hardcore fans back then. And you got Jodie Whittaker, who is kind of filling those same boots. You know, she's got a rather large, on the new series of actors, a rather big, large set of boots to fill. And not even just with the older, the newer actors, but also the older ones as well. So she's really got some big boots to fill. So that's the stuff people kind of overlook. And if you looked at the timeline, because that's what I always hear, oh, you should see how they changed Doctor Who so much over the years. I mean, with her, you know, they changed the whole outlook of the Time Lords. It's like every time the Time Lords were introduced, it was something completely different on their history. You know, like if you watch the War Games, it was different. I think that was the first time you actually physically saw the Time Lords. They actually named them. The very first episode that the Doctor was actually, day one with the Unearthly Child. Yeah, it was a no-brainer. He was from another time and another place, but they never specified. That was with William Hartnell. But then you had with William Hartnell, he meets up with the Meadowland Monk. That was one of my favorite episodes, the Meadowland Monk. That was another alien from the same planet. They weren't called Time Lords at that point. They were just from the same planet. That's when you find out that there is more than one person from another planet that travel through time and space. And they were both I almost said refugees. I call it myself, but they were, they had escaped their planet, and it was they were outlaws, practically. Well, not outlaws. That's not even the correct word. So the Metal Monk is when you kind of find out, okay, well, this man is more than just somebody from the far future. He's from another planet. You really kind of figured that out. Yes, I just said the Unearthly Child. Yeah, that was kind of a given too. But then when Hartnell, who was only in his 50s, unbelievably, he was only in his 50s when he got really sick, and he could not do the show any longer. He looked like he was in his 70s, actually. He was only like my age. He was actually like, even British people don't age too well, because even Peter Capaldi's only in his 50s. He looks like he's in his 60s or whatever. And he's not that old. But, it wasn't until like Hartnell got so sick that he really could not do the episodes that they decided to make, which was the first one with the Cybermen, the 10th Planet was the episode. And at the very end of the episode, you get introduced to something that was never heard of before. They put a completely different actor, and you notice how I just said that, completely different actor into the role who played it totally different. And that was Patrick Troughton. And they just showed that at the very last couple seconds, fade out and fade into from Hartnell into Troughton. And that was pretty weird. And the first one you see, which was, I think it might have been might have been Dalek's Master Plan. It was a Dalek episode. And it was a 180 from the other actor, completely different. And even then, it was like, okay, we really know that this character is completely alien, and not alien from another country, but an alien from a completely different universe even. So that really changed. From there, you kind of learned that, it wasn't until Troughton's run of 3 years, they were, every actor kind of played it 3 years except John Pertwee, who played it 5, and Tom Baker played it 7. But yeah, the change was that, okay, we're going to add a little bit more to this character. We decided to make, with the very last episode of Troughton's, The War Games, which I believe was like 10 episodes. It was pretty long. They introduced that at the very end, or maybe even sooner, that this alien is known as, the character is known as a Time Lord. So after that, that's all you ever heard, with John Pertwee's doctor, about being a Time Lord, because that got introduced at the very end of Troughton's run. So, and so that was a big change. And then there was another change on the character. They changed it completely by adding what was known as Rassilon and Omega, who was the person who was introduced through John Pertwee's episodes, I think on the 10th anniversary. But before that, it was like, okay, he's a Time Lord. Okay, there is, I think it was somewhere in Pertwee's, or actually it might have been more like Tom Baker's, was, characters like Lord Barusa, Rassilon. I mean, these were characters, they kind of just like, okay, we got to add another dimension. We got to add to the character. We have to change, revamp the whole storyline, reinvent it. There was the made-for-TV movie back in 96 or something like that, 97, I forget. It was made from Fox for, with the BBC's, allowing this to happen because they had more money this way. They made it in the U.S. They made a Doctor Who movie that was the pilot for a relaunch on Doctor Who. It never had taken off. Well, they reinvented the character again. They made Doctor Who half human. And they used that excuse of why he was so close to his companions. And he actually ends up kissing his companion. He falls in love with her. So that was like, to me, that was really like, wow, they really changed his character even yet again. And that was back 30 years ago. Well, something like that. What was that? 96, 2006. It was like 20 years ago, whatever. So it obviously didn't do too well. And people didn't pick up on it. They made the Master completely different, because I hear about, they don't like how they changed the Master. I don't kind of like how they changed the Master to a woman. I thought that was horrible. So, and, I heard people complain about, they changed the Master, or they say the Master was a woman, and they just ignore that whole fact. It was like, no, the character of the Master was always a man. I never heard of this nonsense. I don't care of the Doctor, though, but the Master, for one thing, he had no more, if you're a Doctor Who fan, he had no more regenerations. So, how can he miraculously become a woman? And the Doctor's a different story, because he was like a chameleon. He could change physically his whole entire outlook into whatever he wanted to. The Master is a little bit different. And plus, it was just, obviously, it was for political correctness, more so. You can say, well, they changed Jodie Whittaker from a man to, the character, the Doctor, from a man to a woman. But I will say this much, she's kept the character Doctor Who. She hasn't changed it like, now I'm a woman, look at me roar. She hasn't done that, in my opinion. And getting back to it, it's like I said, they've changed the storyline over and over again. I mean, making the character of Doctor Who half human. I mean, for God's sakes, look back. Excuse me for saying that. Look back when they did 2 Dalek movies with Peter Cushing. the Doctor, because the BBC would not give them the rights to the interior of the TARDIS, the outlook of the interior of the TARDIS, and the rights to the show, the BBC show, they did a completely different outlook, because the rights for the Dalek movies were by Terry Nation, I believe, and they didn't have, he kept the rights to that creature. So the movies, they, basically they said, well, you can't stop us from using a police box, and you can't stop us from using Daleks, but that's as far as it goes. In fact, you don't have the right to even call them, we have the rights to the Daleks. We can take the word Doctor Who. So they did. The only thing that went into the two movies was, and it was Terry Nation. I just looked it up. That's what the clickety-click was, if you heard it. It was Doctor Who and the Daleks, and it was two movies. And they couldn't stop it. But, yeah, Doctor Who in those movies, both of them, he was an old man, and he was a human being on Earth. So that was like, you're talking about different. That's what I'm trying to point out. You're talking about different. Well, that was really different. But, yeah, the first one came out in 1965, I believe. There was two movies. And both of them did really well. But they didn't use any of the premise, any of it, from the TV show. Yeah, Invasion of Earth. Excuse me about that. It's my Alexa speaking out. She's talking back. So anyway, Doctor Who in the Daleks came out in 1965. And then a year later, because the movie did really well back then, came Dalek Invasion of Earth. It was called Dalek Invasion, Doctor Who, Dalek Invasion of Earth. But they kind of were not approved by the BBC, so that's why they could not use the interior. But didn't stop them from making the movies. But the bottom line was, that was a whole revamp. The Doctor being a human being. So hearing this nonsense, oh, Doctor Who is so different. It's always been very different. It's always been a completely different show. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And as we'll go back to my original thing of why I'm calling this 3 disliked blondes instead of 3 non-blondes, is because you got Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and Jodie Whittaker, who are not that well liked probably around the globe. Literally not that well liked around the globe. But yet all of them, in my opinion, are successful, more one more than others or two more than others, meaning Boris Johnson and Donald Trump more so than Jodie Whittaker. But I think a lot of this stuff, this negativity, well, at least with Jodie Whittaker, going back to her, is a bunch of, as Rush Limbaugh would say, a bunch of pajama boy crybabies who have only watched the show since 2005. They're not old-time fans. They say they are. You might even have a couple of people that said, oh, yeah, I watched Doctor Who. I mean, did you watch it like I did? I mean, I've watched every episode. I used to tape them on VHS tape and watch those over and over again. From the age of 12, I religiously watched those shows a zillion times. And I'm still watching because they have new channels like, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's called Pluto TV. They have the Doctor Who 24/7. So you get to watch all the episodes I watched growing up over and over and over again. And it is every single episode that's still available. So, but I've watched these from the age of 12. I'm 53. So I've watched these things for almost close to 40-some years almost. So hearing some pajama boy who they say, oh, yeah, I've watched Doctor Who my whole entire life, and you find out that their whole entire life started back in 2005 as far as being introduced or noticed in this TV show, which at the time wasn't real. It was popular, but it was more popular by a select few who watched it on PBS. So, I mean, there is there's a big difference there. And I think that group of people are the ones who are really attacking Jodie on her character, on how she's portraying the character, and also how this producer is just so god-awful, which is, to me, both are a lot of nonsense. So anyway, by the way, last week it was funny because I watched again Sanguli. I actually had something in the mix on him, and I don't know what I put it. I was kind of surprised that Sanguli, he's been doing, he's a guy on Me TV. It's on cable, but it's not a cable channel. That he's been around for since 1970, I believe it said. Because I had it up. Let's see. Okay, here it is. So I did a screenshot of that, too. Yeah, it says that, he started, first episode was September 18th, 1970. And Jerry G. Bishop is the actor, or the guy, actor who plays Sanguli. He's a talk show host. But 1970, that's unbelievable. September 18th, 1970. That's pretty wild. So, he's changed quite a bit over the years. He was very thin when he first started out. So anyway, he had an interesting episode on tonight. It was a werewolf movie, but it was funny. They used it was a female werewolf. And when she changed into the werewolf, they used a regular dog. And the funny thing was, I guess they didn't train this dog too well, because I think it was a real, what do you call it? Like a real wild animal. They had the dog's mouth wired. So I guess so he wouldn't bite anybody. So I felt kind of bad. It's like, you can't get away with that anymore. But they had the dog's mouth wired shut. And for like some close-up shots where the dog, like a physical dog, attacks somebody because she transforms into a mutt. It looks like, because the other dog was a wolf, not a werewolf, but like a wild wolf. Probably some domesticated, but still, they still wired the dog's jaw shut. But for close-up shots, because I guess you can train those better, there was close-up shots in the movie where they used a Doberman Pinscher, and a German Shepherd, And it's like, there's a difference in the hair and the look of a German Shepherd dog and a wolf dog. I mean, there's a big difference. I believe wolf dogs that are, wild wolves or whatever, even if it's domesticated, have longer hair, and it's not black mixed in. So it was like, this is really bad, because, the dog had, it was obviously they had a trained German Shepherd for close-up shots, and, you try to keep them laughing, but, it was not working too well. I was trying to look for Sanguli's episode for tonight. But overall, it was entertaining. But what I wanted to do was talk about. I didn't even know I wanted to talk about last week's show, which was actually really interesting. I told you about that last week. It was called Day the World Ended, and it's a Roger Corman film. Now, Roger Corman films are somewhat like, I wouldn't say they're great, but they are entertaining. Now, I really loved Roger Corman's film of Humanoids from the Deep, because I've mentioned that before. I think that's like one of my favorite Roger Corman films. And it really wasn't his film. It was made by somebody else, a woman director, producer. And what ended up happening was the final cut was not what she had decided to make. And the movie wasn't going to make any money. It was like pretty bad. So that's when Corman stepped in. Oh, by the way, you may not know this, folks, but when the movie Alien was made, the director of that movie actually begged and he seeked out Roger Corman, if I remember correctly, because I remember I got this special on Alien, the movie Alien, and the guy wanted to make a science fiction movie. And he had seeked out Roger Corman, and Roger Corman told him right up front, I can make this film, but I'll let you know right now, you got a good idea here, something like that. You have a great idea, and bottom line is, you don't want me to make your film. It's going to be awful, because Roger Corman is known for taking, films that really he'll make a film that takes no money to make. He makes low budget films. So he told the guy, I'll make your film, but I would recommend that you probably go to somebody else to make your film, because it's not going to be that good. And, I thought that was entertaining. It was some special I watched on history of that came out just recently on Alien, and I was quite honestly, I was shocked by that, to find out that the guy who did make the made Alien, originally got once again he got he did not get him. And Roger Corman said, if you can't get anybody else to make your film, I'll make it for you. And they said, he said to him, you don't want this. And it ended up like he didn't do it. He took Roger Corman's advice, and he did get somebody else. Thank God, right? So, anyway, that went a little bit in a different direction, but that's fine because it's up to an hour almost right now. So anyway, I was going back to Roger Corman. I was talking about last week. I was talking about that Roger Corman film. The name of the movie that was on from Singuli this week, Sen, was Cry of the Werewolf. Just in case you were interested, because I know you're not. So that's why I told you. But yeah, that movie that he had on last week, the Roger Corman film, the one thing was another thing I have to mention. The day the world ended was, again, he makes low budget films, but this one in particular was actually good because he did point out one other thing. You had, I think, 6 surviving people on the face of the planet in the beginning of the movie. You find out there's more. And the thing that was interesting was that, out of these survivors, this guy had made a shelter, known that this was the end of the world. People turned into these monsters. So he had prepped himself and his daughter and some other scientist or something to, hey, we're going to be the only survivors. I made sure there's just enough food for, at least the next couple months. And after that, we're going to have to decide what's going to happen from there. So he only had enough food for 4 people. And then he gets strangers that come in, and these strangers then basically make themselves like, well, you're going to take care of us now too. Like total strangers break in, like physically almost, well, they were ready to break down the door to this guy's house in this movie that I just mentioned. And they said, well, you're going to have to take care of us too. And now here's the thing. There's that side where you got the daughter who is like the liberals. And she said, Dad, you can't leave these people out here to die and starve to death or just just die because of, the nuclear fallout, whatever. So you got the Democrat. We got to let these people in from the outside. You probably may not see where I'm going with this. Think of those as like the refugees or the people from other countries that really in the U.S. are not welcomed, but we have to take them in because that's the right thing to do. That was the daughter. Then you have the father. He's the stereotypical American, which I like. And he says, no, we're not letting him in. We only have enough food for ourselves. I did not prepare to have total strangers come in and take over. And that's exactly what they did. These strangers came in. One was a man and a woman, and the guy was very obnoxious and very hostile. And he says, I'm not going to listen to you at all. You're going to listen to me. And this guy basically barged into the house and dictated to the owner of the house, you're going to do what I want. You're going to hear my word. I'm not going to listen to you at all. So you have the two total strangers, actually a total, I think, of 3 or 4. But 2, this man and the woman who were, the guy especially, was extremely obnoxious and says, you're going to do my beck and call. So that's the foreigners. That's the foreigners in my comparison to real life in this old 1955 film where, you're going to listen to me and you're going to do what I tell you to do, and I'm going to take over your house. That's the foreigners in real life, and that was the guy who basically barged into the house in this film of Day the World Ended from Roger Corman. So, yeah. So, thank God at the end it had a happy ending with that guy. He got his just dessert. But, yeah, I mean, it's funny how a movie as old as that kind of like really follows real life, even though it is it's quite old too, obviously. It's like almost like 60 some years old. So, but it was just like I wanted to mention that last week, and it was like, damn, I'm done the show. I can't do that now. So, I just found that extremely entertaining how life dictates movies, not movies dictate life. And sometimes nowadays now it's the other way around. That, pretty much, life dictates movies. But, yeah, years ago, and this time, if you watch older movies, you're going to see it's the other way around. By the way, it was funny. When I was talking about Sungul, I only got 2 minutes left. I'm going to play that piece from Matt, which I have somewhere on my desktop. TB. It's going to be Matt's thing. I'll mention it one more time. But, yeah, there was a comic book like fans from DC had made. Sunguli meets up with the Super Friends. And it was like, wow, I'd really like to get the comic book. So guess what they're charging? Like, you can't find anywhere. I think there's one copy on eBay. And they're charging like $1,000. No, it's not a comic book. It's an action figure of Sunguli. And they're charging up to $1,000. And then there was like the 40th anniversary mystery box they put out from MeTV on Sunguli. And I think I paid like $40-$50 when I bought it. Now people are asking for that like $700-$800. I mean, that's like ridiculous. Nobody really knows who Sunguli is, other than a handful select. But I just find that very entertaining. Like, where do people come up with this nonsense where I guess they thrive on people like me because, Matt, you're laugh about that and probably even admit to that not admit, but you're going to say, yeah, see, Walter, I know you're one of the fools who are going to buy this crap. But, yeah, action figures, and there was, I guess, one that was released probably just for Comic-Con. One from like the New York Comic-Con or whatever. They make a limited edition for that thing of Singuli, an action figure. They're charging like $1,000 for it. I mean, that's crazy. I've never heard of such nonsense. And Walter, are you going to buy one? Of course I will. No, I'm not. Anyway, I'm going to play right now Matt TB. I hope you enjoyed my show. Have a good night, folks, and I'll see you next time.